Welcome to our journey through time as we explore some of the most iconic sports cars from the golden days of automotive history. We're talking about the cars that made your dad feel a bit funny in his trousers, the ones that made your mum weak at the knees. We'll be looking at the cars that defined generations from the dawn of motoring to the brink of the new millennium. We'll delve into their history, their performance, and the impact they had on the automotive landscape. So buckle up, petrolheads, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Now, before the Second World War, cars were, let's be honest, a bit rubbish. They were slow, they were uncomfortable, and they were about as reliable as a chocolate teapot in a sauna. But then came along these pioneers, these daredevils who strapped themselves into what were essentially motorized wicker baskets and went racing. And I tell you what, they were racing machines, these early sports cars. The Bugatti Type 35, for example, this sleek little beast dominated motorsport in the 1920s, winning over 1,000 races. It was light, it was agile, and with its signature horseshoe-shaped radiator, it looked absolutely stunning. Then you have the Alfa Romeo 8C. This thing was a monster, a supercharged straight-eight engine that produced, for its time, an absurd amount of power. It was a symphony of Italian engineering, and it sounded bloody fantastic. These early sports cars were more than just machines. They were symbols of speed, of adventure, of a world on the cusp of change. After the war, things started to get interesting. Europe, after spending a good few years blowing itself to smithereens, decided it was time to build some beautiful cars. And boy, did they deliver. The Mercedes-Benz 300 SL, with its iconic gull-winged doors, was like something out of a science fiction film. It was a technological marvel, and it's still drop-dead gorgeous today. Then there's the Jaguar XK120. This British beauty was all about curves and elegance. It was fast, it was stylish, and it had a certain swagger that no other car could match. These cars weren't just about performance. They were about style, they were about luxury, they were about making a statement. They were the embodiment of post-war optimism, and they still turn heads today. Now, while the Europeans were busy crafting their elegant sports cars, the Americans, bless their cotton socks, decided to do things a little differently. They took the idea of a sports car and injected it with a massive dose of, well, America. The Ford Mustang, the Chevrolet Camaro, the Dodge Charger. These weren't just cars, they were weapons of mass acceleration. Big, brawny V8 engines, enough torque to twist the earth off its axis, and looks that could melt asphalt. These American muscle cars weren't about subtlety, they were about raw power, about noise, about going fast in a straight line. And you know what? They were bloody brilliant at it. The 1970s, the decade that taste forgot, the decade of flared trousers, disco music, and the oil crisis. Yes, the party came to a bit of a screeching halt when OPEC decided to turn off the taps. Suddenly those gas-guzzling muscle cars weren't looking quite so clever. But from the ashes of this automotive crisis arose some truly remarkable sports cars. The Porsche 911, for example, proved that you could have performance and efficiency. It was a technological triumph, and it cemented Porsche's place as a legend in the automotive world. And then there was the Datsun 240Z, a Japanese sports car that took the world by storm. It was affordable, it was reliable, and it was a heck of a lot of fun to drive. Who needs a thirsty old V8 when you've got a rev-happy little six-cylinder, eh? The 1980s. Shoulder pads, synth pop, and enough hairspray to punch a hole in the ozone layer. And the cars? Well, they were just as outrageous. The Ferrari F40, the Lamborghini Countach, the Porsche 959. These weren't just cars, they were poster children for excess. They were fast, they were loud, and they cost more money than God. These supercars were all about pushing the boundaries of performance. Turbochargers were bolted on with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Aerodynamics were honed in wind tunnels that could suck the chrome off a bumper, and the result was pure automotive insanity. The 1990s saw a shift in the world of sports cars. Computers started to play a bigger role, and manufacturers began to focus on things like aerodynamics and chassis technology. The McLaren F1, for example, was a technological tour de force. It was the brainchild of Gordon Murray, a man who designs racing cars like other people design garden sheds. It was a masterpiece of engineering, and it held the record for the world's fastest production car for over a decade. And then there was the Honda NSX. This Japanese gem was a revelation. It was reliable, it was comfortable, and it could outhandle just about anything else on the road. It proved that you didn't need to sacrifice usability to have a proper sports car. And who could forget the Toyota Supra? This turbocharged beast became a legend in its own right, thanks to its incredible performance and, let's be honest, its starring role in a certain film franchise. Now, throughout this journey through time, we've seen how the Japanese have consistently produced brilliant sports cars. But in the late 20th century, they really upped their game. The Nissan Skyline GTR, affectionately known as Godzilla, was a technological marvel. It was all-wheel drive, it had a twin-turbocharged engine, and it could out-accelerate just about anything else on the planet. And then there was the Mazda RX-7. This rotary-powered beauty was a real driver's car. It was light, it was agile, and it had a unique engine note that sounded like nothing else on the road. These Japanese sports cars weren't just good for their price, they were genuinely brilliant cars, full stop. They challenged the established order, and they forced the Europeans and Americans to up their game. So there we have it, a whirlwind tour through the history of the sports car. From those rickety early machines to the technological marvels of the late 20th century, these cars have left an indelible mark on the automotive landscape. They've thrilled us, they've excited us, and they've made us dream of open roads and endless possibilities. They've also made us appreciate just how far car design has come. I mean, can you imagine strapping yourself into a Bugatti Type 35 and trying to cope with today's traffic? You'd be run over by a milk float before you could say double D-clutch. But even though these classic sports cars might seem a little bit antiquated by today's standards, they still have the power to stir something within us. They're a reminder of a time when cars were more than just appliances. They were expressions of passion, of engineering excellence, of the sheer joy of driving. And that's something worth celebrating, don't you think? Thanks for joining us on this nostalgic ride through the history of sports cars. From the early days of motorsport to the rise of the supercar, we've seen how these machines have evolved over the decades. But one thing remains constant: the passion, the excitement, and the sheer joy of getting behind the wheel of a truly great sports car. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your favorite classic car in the comments below.